All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive powerhouse concept in business strategy: cost leadership. If you've ever found yourself wondering how giant global brands can consistently offer the absolute lowest prices and still rake in billions of dollars in profit, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down exactly how they pull it off.
Here is the roadmap for this breakdown. 1. The competitive strategy matrix. 2. Defining cost leadership. 3. Avenues to cost advantage. 4. The rewards of low costs. And finally, 5. Risks and pitfalls.
Okay, part one, the competitive strategy matrix. So, Michael Porter mapped this framework out back in 1985, and it is honestly still the go-to playbook for business. It elegantly breaks competitive advantage down into two big buckets: cost versus differentiation, and then maps those across broad and narrow markets. It asks the fundamental questions. Are you competing by being the absolute cheapest to operate, or by being totally unique? And are you going after everyone or a super specific niche? Today, we are zeroing in right on that broad market, low-cost quadrant. It's essentially a tale of two completely different philosophies. Differentiation is all about commanding a premium price because you're offering something unique. Think of high-end brands dropping massive budgets on gorgeous design and R&D. But cost leadership, that's a totally different game. It is hyper-focused on maximum internal efficiency, stripping out the frills, and serving a standardized product to the masses. Two completely different games played on the exact same field.
Which brings us to part 2, defining cost leadership.
Now, we really need to bust a major myth here. Cost leadership does not just mean slapping a cheap price tag on something. Seriously, that is a huge misconception. It's actually this relentless, deep-seated philosophy of slashing costs across your entire internal value chain. You could actually sell your product at a totally normal average retail price, but because your internal costs are rock bottom compared to everyone else, boom, you're pocketing a massive profit margin. It is all about deep internal efficiency. Walmart is literally the textbook example here. When they say everyday low prices, that isn't just a clever marketing slogan. It's the end result of absolute extreme efficiency in their supply chain. By negotiating incredibly cheap rates from suppliers and moving enormous volumes of inventory with pinpoint logistics, they can pass some of that savings to the customer, all while keeping their own profits super healthy. And, they're definitely not alone. Think about Bic churning out millions of those identical, reliable little pens. Or Southwest and EasyJet, they totally revolutionized air travel by simply standardizing their planes and cutting out the expensive perks. So yeah, you might have to pony up a few bucks for a tiny bag of pretzels, but the base flight is ridiculously cheap compared to legacy carriers. They focus on the absolute essentials and just do them cheaper than the rest.
All right, part 3, avenues to cost advantage. So how do they actually pull this off? Well, companies pull some very specific levers. They maximize economies of scale, because the more you make, the cheaper each unit gets. They specifically design products so they can be easily automated. They lean hard into the learning curve, meaning they just get faster and better at debugging their processes over time, and they are absolutely ruthless about overhead. Think bare-bones facilities, slashing cutting-edge R&D, and minimizing lavish marketing campaigns. It is a total, system-wide dedication to cost elimination. Once you actually achieve that crazy low-cost advantage, there are basically two distinct paths to actually cash in. Path 1, you use that edge to deliberately underprice your competitors. You make a little less on each item, sure, but you attract millions of price-sensitive buyers, so your total profit skyrockets. Path 2, you keep your prices exactly the same as the other guys, but since it costs you so much less to make the product in the first place, your profit margin on every single sale is significantly fatter. Moving right along into part 4, the rewards of low costs. Reaching the absolute pinnacle of cost leadership gives a company an incredible margin of safety. They can weather storms that would literally destroy other businesses. If a brutal price war kicks off and prices tank across the industry, the cost leader is going to be the last one standing. They can afford to drop prices to a level that would instantly bankrupt their less efficient rivals. It functions basically like an invisible defensive shield. Aside from surviving price wars, you also get massive leverage over your suppliers. When you're buying raw materials in astronomical bulk, you pretty much get to dictate the terms. Plus, it builds a massive, terrifying wall against new entrants. Just imagine trying to launch a startup and immediately having to compete with Amazon's bottom barrel pricing. It completely locks new competitors out. Sounds like the perfect strategy, right? You cut costs, you dominate the market, you become totally invincible. But we have to ask, is being the cheapest always the safest position to hold?
That takes us to our final section, Part 5, Risks and Pitfalls. Because honestly, every single strength in this generic strategy comes with a mirrored, massive vulnerability. You've got super efficient, low-cost processes? Awesome. But rivals can probably imitate them pretty cheaply. Just look at how clone manufacturers quickly undercut IBM. You've got a perfectly standardized basic product? That's great, right up until consumer tastes suddenly pivot and people want upscale, feature-rich options. Or maybe you've invested heavily in massive scale and current tech. Well, one radical technological breakthrough from a startup, and suddenly all your expensive legacy equipment is just a giant obsolete anchor. There's a famous cautionary tale here with the Schlitz Brewing Company. They got so incredibly zealous about cutting costs that they actually started substituting inferior grains into their brewing process just to save a few pennies. And guess what? The quality of the beer totally tanked, and customers just completely abandoned them. It's a really stark warning. If you strip away so much cost that the product loses its basic acceptable value, the whole strategy is going to blow up in your face. The ultimate harsh reality is this: a low-cost provider strategy still entails major risk. It's not a comfortable finish line. It's a constant, grueling race. You're constantly looking over your shoulder because an innovative rival might wake up tomorrow and discover an entirely new, even lower-cost value chain approach. Your advantage is really only as good as the current state of the art. So I want to leave you with this to chew on. If an innovative competitor figures out a way to completely bypass your value chain and undercut your absolute lowest prices tomorrow, what exactly is your strategy to survive? It's a tough question, but it's one every business leader has to grapple with. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.